from archaic translation by H.T. Francis and R.A. Neil. Jataka number 327. Khuddaka Jataka. Fragrant odours, etc. This story was told by the master while residing at Jataka monastery, of a certain brother who regretted having taken to holy order of disciples. On this occasion the master asked the brother if it were true that he was discontented, and on his answering, "Yes, holy sir," he asked him the reason. The brother replied, "By reason of sinful passion." The master said, "Woman cannot be guarded. There is no keeping her safe." Sages of old placed a woman in mid-ocean in a palace by the Simbali lake, but failed to preserve her honor. Then he told a story of the olden time. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva came to life as the son of the king by his queen wife. And when he was grown up, at his father's death he bare rule. Kākāti was his chief queen and as lovely as an apsara. The old form of the legend will be found set on in full in the Kālabāhu. Here follows a brief summary of it. Now at this time a certain Garuda king came disguised as a man, and played at dice with the king of Benares. Falling in love with the chief queen Kākāti, he carried her off with him to the living place of the Garudas and lived happily with her. The king missing her told his musician named Nikāya to go in quest of her. He found the Garuda king lying on a bed of erica grass in a certain lake. And just as the Garuda was on the point of leaving that spot, he seated himself in the midst of the royal bird's plumage, and was in this way conveyed to the living place of the Garudas. There he enjoyed the lady's favours, and again seating himself on the bird's wing returned home. And when the time came for the Garuda to play at dice with the king, the musician took his lute and going up to the gaming board he stood before the king, and in the form of a song gave utterance to the first stanza. Fragrant odours round me playing breath of fair Kākāti's love, from her distant home conveying thoughts my inmost soul to move. On hearing this the Garuda responded in a second stanza. Sea and Kabuk stream defying did you reach my island home? Over 7 oceans flying to the Simbal grove did come? Nikāya, on hearing this, uttered the third stanza. It was through you all space defying I was carried to Simbal grove, and over seas and rivers flying it was through you I found my love. Then the Garuda king replied in the fourth stanza. Out upon the foolish blunder, what a fool I have been. Lovers best were kept apart, lo! I've served as go-between. So the Garuda brought the queen and gave her back to the king of Benares, and came not there any more. The master, his lesson ended, revealed the truths and identified the birth. At the conclusion of the truths the discontented brother attained the fruition of the first path. At that time the discontented brother was Nikāya, and I myself was the king. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by H.T. Francis and R.A. Neil. Jataka number 328. Ananusociya Jataka. Why should I shed tears, etc. This story was told by the master while living at Jataka monastery, of a certain landowner who had lost his wife. On her death, they say, he neither washed himself nor took food, and neglected his farm duties. Overcome with grief he would wander about the cemetery mourning, while his predestination to enter the first path blazed on like a halo about his head. The master, early one morning, putting his eye upon the world and seeing him said, Except me there is no one that can remove this man's sorrow and give to him the power of entering the first path. I will be his refuge. So when he had returned from his rounds and had eaten his meal, he took an attendant monk and went to the door of the landowner's house. And he on hearing that the master was coming went out to meet him, and with other marks of respect seated him in the prescribed seat and came and sitting on one side saluted him. The master asked, For which reason, lay disciple, are you silent? Reverend sir, he replied, I am grieving for her. The master said, Lay disciple, that which is breakable is broken, but when this happens, one should not grieve. Sages of old, when they lost a wife, knew this truth, and therefore sorrowed not. And then at his request the master told an old world tale. The old legend will be found set on in the Kālabāhu birth in the 10th book. Here follows a short summary of it. Once upon a time when Brahmadatta was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva was born into a Brahmin family. And when he grew up, he studied all the arts at Taxila and then returned to his parents. In this birth the great being became a holy young student. Then his parents told him they would look out a wife for him. "I have no desire for a married life," said the Bodhisattva. "When you are dead, I will adopt the religious life of an ascetic." And being greatly begged by them, he had a golden image made, and said, "If you can find me a girl like unto this, I will take her to wife." His parents sent on some emissaries with a large escort, and asked them to place the golden image in a covered carriage and go and search through the plains of India, till they found just such a young Brahmin girl, when they were to give this golden image in exchange, and bring the girl back with them. Now at this time a certain holy man passing from the Brahma world was born again in the form of a young girl in a town in the kingdom of Kasi, in the house of a Brahmin worth 80 crores, and the name given her was Samalabhasini. At the age of 16 she was a fair and gracious girl, like to an apsara, gifted with all the signs of female beauty. And since no thought of evil was ever suggested to her by the power of sinful passion, she was perfectly pure. So the men took the golden image and wandered about till they reached this village. The inhabitants on seeing the image asked, "Why is Samalabhasini, the daughter of such and such a Brahmin, placed there?" The messengers on hearing this found the Brahmin family, and chose Samalabhasini for the prince's bride. She sent a message to her parents, saying, "When you are dead, I shall adopt the religious life. I have no desire for the married state." They said, "What are you thinking of, girl?" And accepting the golden image they sent off their daughter with a great group of attendants. The marriage ceremony took place against the wishes of both the Bodhisattva and Samalabhasini. Though sharing the same room and the same bed they did not regard one another with the eye of sinful passion, but lived together like two holy men or two female saints. In due course of time the father and mother of the Bodhisattva died. He performed their funeral rites and calling to him Samalabhasini, said to her, "My dear, my family property amounts to 80 crores, and yours too is worth another 80 crores. Take all this and enter upon household life. I shall become an ascetic." "Sir," she answered, "if you become an ascetic, I will become one too. I cannot forsake you." "Come then," he said. So spending all their wealth in almsgiving and throwing up their worldly fortune as it were a lump of phlegm, they journeyed into the Himalaya country and both of them adopted the ascetic life. Thereafter living for a long time on wild fruits and roots. They at length came down from the Himalayas to procure salt and vinegar, and gradually found their way to Benares, and lived in the royal grounds. And while they were living there, this young and delicate female ascetic, from eating insipid rice of a mixed quality, was attacked by dysentery and not being able to get any healing remedies, she grew very weak. The Bodhisattva at the time forgoing his rounds to beg for alms, took hold of her and carried her to the gate of the city and there laid her on a bench in a certain hall, and himself went into the city for alms. He had scarce gone out when she expired. The people, seeing the great beauty of this female ascetic, crowded about her, weeping and mourning. The Bodhisattva after going his round of begging returned, and hearing of her death he said, "That which has the quality of dissolution is dissolved. All impermanent existences are of this kind." With these words he sat down on the bench on which she lay and eating the mixture of food he rinsed out his mouth. The people that stood by gathered round him and said, "Reverend sir, what was this female ascetic to you?" "When I was a layman," he replied, "she was my wife." "Holy sir," they said, "while we weep and cry and cannot control our feelings, why do you not weep?" The Bodhisattva said, "While she was alive, she belonged to me in some sort. Nothing belongs to her that is gone to another world. She has passed into the power of others. For which reason should I weep?" And teaching the people the truth, he recited these stanzas. "Why should I shed tears for you, fair Samalabhasini? Past to death's majority you are from now on lost to me. For which reason should weak man mourn what to him is only lent? He too draws his mortal breath loses every hour to death. Be he standing, sitting still, moving, resting, what he will, in the twinkling of an eye, in a moment death is near. Life I count a thing unstable, loss of friends inevitable. Cherish all that are alive, sorrow not should you survive. Thus did the great being teach the truth, explaining by these 4 stanzas the impermanence of things. The people performed funeral rites over the female ascetic. And the Bodhisattva returned to the Himalayas, and entering on the higher knowledge arising from mystic meditation was destined to birth in the Brahma world. The master, having ended his lesson, revealed the truths and identified the birth. At the conclusion of the truths, the landowner attained to fruition of the first path. At that time the mother of Rahul was Samalabhasini, and I myself was the ascetic. Source. Adapted from archaic translation by H.T. Francis and R.A. Neil. Jataka number 329. Kālabāhu Jataka. Once we enjoyed, etc. This was a story told by the master while living in the bamboo grove, with regard to Devdutta's loss of gains and honor. For when Devdutta had unreasonably conceived a grudge against the Buddha and bribed a band of archers to kill him, his offence became known by the letting loose of the elephant Nalagiri. Then men took away his office and the rations provided for him, and the king ceased to regard him. And having lost his source of gains and honor, he went about living on what he begged in noble families. The brethren started a discussion in the Hall of Truth, how that Devdutta thought to get gain and honor, but when he had got it he could not keep it. The master came and inquired what was the subject the brethren sat in gathering to discuss. And on being told what it was he said, not only now, brethren, but formerly too, Devdutta was deprived of gains and honor. And he then told them an old world legend. Once upon a time when Dhananjaya was reigning in Benares, the Bodhisattva became a parrot named Radha. He was a well-grown bird with perfectly formed limbs. And his younger brother was called Potthapada. A certain hunter trapped these 2 birds and brought them as a present to the king of Benares. The king put the pair in a golden cage and took care of them and gave them honey and parched corn to eat in a golden dish and sugar water to drink. Great attention was paid them, and they attained to the highest degree of profit and honor. Then a certain forester brought a big black monkey, called Kālabāhu, as a present to the king, and from the fact of his coming later than the parrots, he received still greater gain and respect, while that paid to the parrots fell off. The Bodhisattva through his possession of Buddha qualities said not a word. But his younger brother, from the absence of these qualities being unable to put up with the honor paid to the monkey, said, "Brother, formerly in this royal house men gave us tasty food, but now we get nothing, and they offer it all to the monkey Kālabāhu. As we receive neither gain nor honor in this place from the king, what are we to do? Come, let us go and live in the forest." And as he talked with him, he uttered the first stanza. Once we enjoyed of food abundant store, this monkey now has what was ours before. Come, Radha, let us to the forest rush. Such scurvy treatment what can justify? Radha, on hearing this, replied in the second stanza. Gain and loss and praise and blame, pleasure, pain, dishonour, fame, all as transient states conceive, why should Potthapada grieve? On hearing this, Potthapada was unable to get rid of his grudge against the monkey and repeated the third stanza. Radha, wisest bird alive, sure you knowest things to come, this nasty creature who shall drive from the court to his old home? Radha, on hearing this, uttered the fourth stanza. Often will his puckered face and moving ears the royal children fill with foolish fears. Soon Kālabāhu through some impish freak, far far away his food will have to seek. In a very short time the monkey by shaking his ears and the like tricks before the young princes terrified them. In their alarm they made an outcry. The king asked what it meant, and hearing the cause, said, "Drive him away." So he had the monkey driven away, and the parrots were restored to their former condition of gain and honor. The master here ended his lesson and identified the birth. At that time Devdutta was Kālabāhu, Ananda was Potthapada, and I myself was Radha,